David. David.
He's falling in a beautiful swirling pattern.
David.
Hello, welcome to the David Wells Experiment. I'm your host, David Wells, and as you might be able to tell, this audio sounds just a little different, and that is because I've gone from recording stuff on my iPhone 11 Pro Max to the Tascam DL10, and yeah, this one is like a legit lapel mic. So anyway, I've kind of been really on and off. Kind of dipped out in 2022, and it's been almost a year later. I think I might have uploaded an episode or two more in between this time. I think I did a few that were unreleased, but I'm here again. I probably won't upload to the same level of frequency as I did before, but I think last time I was still working on Expo last time I uploaded like regular episodes. Well, anyway, I'm here, I'm back again. I'll try to do more where it's like I don't just skip a whole presidency and then like another episode. But anyway, so for new people, basically I just talk about whatever interests me. I try to stay away from contentious stuff, but if I'm interested in something and it just happens to be contentious, I'll approach it, but purely from a perspective of like, oh, this seems kind of neat, or what's that? Well, a lot of things have happened. Notably, Jason David Frank, the actor who played the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, the Red Zeo, Red Turbo Ranger, and the Black Dino Thunder Ranger, passed away in November of last year. That was one I wasn't ready for. It was just he was one of those dudes who seemed so in love with life and living that when I found out he was gone, I was really hoping that it was like fake. And I bring that up now because I was running some errands last weekend, and the thought just blipped across my mind, like, why did he have to go so soon? Like, we thought we had so many years more with him. And one thing that really crushed me was the fact that a month or two before his passing, he had been at a Comic-Con in my home city of San Antonio, Texas. And I think I remember seeing an advert for it and being like, well, maybe next time. And it dawned upon me, there won't be a next time. At least not in this life. And man, I really wish I'd taken that opportunity. Like, it's funny, one thing that used to make me like get teary-eyed and cry kind of was, and I think I might have mentioned this in another podcast before, I would imagine one of the things that I really wanted was to meet him at a Comic-Con and ask him to pray for me, because he was very upfront about his faith. And I guess one thing that I loved about that was like Power Rangers, like comics and video games and all the shows I grew up on, and going to church were a big thing about my childhood. And when my parents split, that kind of felt like a shadow fell over my life. And I remember when it did happen, I was just like resigned to the idea of, okay, you're just going to exist and you just have to wait until you die. And like the first time I really felt like there was another option than just existing was about 2003. I found a VHS copy of the Power Rangers movie at a Walmart, and I bought it because I hadn't seen it in forever, and it was legitimately like the first time I'd felt hopeful in forever. And I remember like praying like that, you know, I was like 13 or 14 or something, I don't know, but I remember praying like, dear Lord Jesus, I hope they all know you. And a couple years later, I find out, oh wow, the Green Ranger is like big into Christianity and stuff. And he was one of those actors who, you know, obviously Power Rangers and Zords and all that, they don't exist. But he basically, it felt like he was the character that he portrayed. Like some people, they'll be in front of the kids like, hey man, let's go. And like follow your dreams and everything. And they get out of the public eye and it's like, oh gosh, where is my money at? Thank goodness. But that was not him. I've heard numerous accounts of the fact that he would stay until like every fan got a signature or had an interaction, even when the time went well past that. He like didn't leave anybody behind. And yeah, the one thing that I kind of console myself with was I've commented a few times, so if that's my sole interaction, sometimes I would get a like. So if that's my sole interaction with him, you know, so be it. But I remember when I found the news out that, you know, he was gone, that dream of going to a con or an event and asking him to pray for me, I had to put that aside. And that was so lamentable. But, you know, I'm sure that when he got to the pearly gates, Jesus said, well done, good and faithful servant, because he touched a lot of people's lives. So this podcast will start kind of heavy, and I'm going to try to make it progressively lighter, but we've got maybe one more dark thing to go through. Another thing that happened was my grandpa passed away in January of 2023. What's crazy was in November of 22, I remember seeing him at Thanksgiving, and he was walking around, he was getting up, he seemed great. But then just maybe a month or so later, we were at his house for Christmas Eve, and he wasn't walking around. He was sitting at his bed, and we were getting him food, and I was like, and he had some breathing tubes in his nose, and I hadn't really seen him in such a vulnerable state. But he still seemed his old chipper self. And then a couple times he went to the hospital and we visited him. And then he got out of the hospital. And I remember towards the end, something I kept doing was I kept thanking him for buying me, back in the day, a Game Boy Pocket and an original PlayStation, because, not to sound like a criticism, but my family just, I don't think we could have afforded that, but he was better off financially, so he was able to get those for me, and I had a lot of fun. And it's funny, like, I'd mention a bunch of other things to him, but whenever I would thank him for the Game Boy and PlayStation, that was the only thing that started to make me kind of like cry uncontrollably. And I remember him saying to me like, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah. And what else? But like, yeah, and then he just went to the hospital and it progressively got worse. And yeah, and then one day on January 27th, 2023, we were all in the hospital room and we'd gotten a text message in our group chat that he decided it was going to be his graduation day. And by that we mean he had lung cancer and they were going to decide to just, let him pass. Like, and I don't know the exact specifics and I don't want to get into it. But what it wasn't like a life terminating injection or anything. He just opted not to go through with, I guess, like any reparative surgery that would leave him in a not much better off state. But anyway, it was a strange thing to just see him kind of like fade like that and to see that represented in a quantity in numbers on a screen. And then I just remember them saying like time of death and then 3:30 p.m. The funny thing is I have this weird thing where I like interconnect like fiction and movies and stuff. And like, for those of you who've seen the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, you'll probably get this. Other people, they'll be like, what's going on? But anyway, I remember we were all about to, head out and we were all saying goodbye to our grandma and our other relatives. And my brother casually mentions like, oh wow, he kind of looks like Zordon. And I'd retained my composure pretty well, but for some reason that was the thing that just, the floodgates opened. And he had been like declared dead for like a good couple solid minutes. But I remember when I like sort of hugged his physical body for the last time, I could sort of hear his like heartbeat still kind of like going, even at like a reduced rate. I guess the system hadn't totally gone quite yet. And even though he was gone, that kind of felt like his real farewell. And I shot a video for his funeral. And I still need to edit that, but it's one of those things where it's like, you want it to be perfect because there's so many ways you could think about doing it. I do need to get on it because the funeral was in April. And yeah. Anyway, what else? Well, that's kind of the heavy stuff. I guess in regards to lighter news, it's kind of funny. This summer, as the movie narrators used to say, and which you don't hear that often except in South Park parodying them, this summer really doesn't feel like the movies are dominated with, I don't know, big Marvel movies or animated films, or at least not in the way we would think. Spider-Man, the latest Spider-Verse movie crushed it, where other traditional contenders have faltered. Like, I don't know if there is a DreamWorks movie, which I've sort of heard good things, and Pixar has Elemental, but I don't know. There used to be a time when I would think, oh, Pixar, I've got to see their latest flick. I honestly hadn't felt that way in a long time, so I'm sure it's a decent film. Pixar has never made a movie that outright is horrible, but I'm sure even like Cars 2 and 3, which I haven't seen, but I'm sure like it's probably okay. But yeah, there's just been, it used to be like, oh, I've got to see their latest endeavor. and I haven't felt that way in a while. I still want to see Lightyear, even though I've heard not great reviews about it, but I don't know. We'll see. If I feel like downloading Disney Plus for the latest time, or if somebody rents it on Redbox, which, yes, those still exist. Oh, the funniest thing happened also in that time. So, if you probably know that during the pandemic, I used to be on Expo. And for people who wonder, what's Expo? That's when I would stand out the window at the drive-thru and hand people their food. And because I did that all the time, they're like, you want to wear a hat to keep from overheating. So I did. But what I did was I would always try to get a crazy one from like Party City. And I got paid the nicest compliment a couple months ago. We had this new girl at my work. Won't say her name, but it'd be funny if she's listening. She showed up wearing like a colorful hairpin. And when I introduced myself, I was like, oh yeah, you're the guy who would wear those crazy hats. And she's like, my school talks about you. And that was such an ego boost for me. And I just felt so wonderfully complimented. So that was cool. And yeah, anyway, what else? I really need to make something. I have had in the pipeline, let's see, an audio drama that's sort of a modern retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. I had a script written up. I've gotten several voices done. I guess it's just one of those things where I've got to commit to it. First of all, I've just got to find out which of my little Tascam recorders I recorded the audio on, and just see which characters I need left. Also, I need to just make movies again, because I used to do that very prolifically. What other things do I need to do? I spent years making one video game, and I finished it, but I kind of wish it was like, when I finished making a video, there's a file on my computer where I can just click and it goes. But it really isn't the same way. Like, I'm given a link that if I click on, I can go online and play it. But yeah. I also tried using a game engine called Pico 8. And I've got all the big game engines like Unity and Unreal on my laptop, which when I bought it brand new, it was low on the totem pole of performance. So if I wanted to do any serious video game development, I would probably want to get a more robust machine. I honestly don't know how far along I'd go with it. I would probably want to do a Mega Man / Mario knockoff, and possibly some sort of Pokemon clone. And I think that might satisfy my video game itch. I've also kind of come to reconcile the idea I might not ever be the next Christopher Nolan. I'll probably never reach his levels of success. I had a family incident that happened back in 2018 where that, as my highest life priority, it got knocked off from its perch. And I just feel like it's to just survive and make sure that they're well taken care of. And now I just want to make 100,000 a year, or 50,000 a year. And if I can make a movie that's good, which there's a part of me that's sort of egging me on, saying dude, did you give up? And it's even saying it now, I feel I'm just looking for that thing to sort of rev myself up again and make something great that people will be oh my gosh, did you hear about this movie? That's what I would love. But who knows? I guess there's part of me that's always kind of had that sort of... I feel like the thing that happened was in 2018, that kind of getting the band together and rallying the troops. Like, that got to be really difficult. Like, that mechanism, that part of me was kind of damaged. But anyway, I get this strange feeling that it's all just something internal. That as soon as I just do it, that'll happen. And it's funny, like, veering into the sort of, like, a little dark stuff, or the, like, political things. And really, again, not I'm trying to push anything on anyone, but, this is just where I'm kind of interested in something. I got really kind of nervous last year when I heard stuff about, Russia saying, like, all cards are on the table in regards to Ukraine. And that's kind of some dicey language. And I had a genuine existential quandary. And, like, now, not so much anymore. But, for a while there, I was going to the restroom just to check my phone to see what the latest news on this issue was. What else? Okay, one more political thing and then I'll, be done with that. And then I remember I got really nervous maybe a month or two ago when I heard about the whole debt ceiling thing and, like, oh my gosh, the US could default on its debt. And part of me was, but I would also hear from people saying, we're going to reach a deal. And I got really nervous when I'd hear some people saying, like, no, we're not going to reach a deal. It's all or nothing. And I always kind of had in the back of my mind, none of these jokers, none of these politicians want to be the dude to say to America, all right, the party's over. No more fun in life. Life is going to be horrible from now on. Nobody wants to do that because that would be career suicide. So there's probably a world of mechanics and multivariables to discuss regarding that. But it's a couple months later and we're still here. We're still getting our fast food and watching Netflix and not living in terrible circumstances. I mean, heck, you're here listening to my podcast. So, the biggest problems that we still have today are first world. So let's count our blessings in that regard. Yeah. Oh, one thing I would like to discuss with people that's kind of verges on dark, kind of verges on the optimistic. I'd be remiss if I didn't share this life hack that I learned. So, I was listening to this podcast about this film director, Kevin Smith, and I think I might have even mentioned this a while back, but I don't know. Anyway, he was recalling this horrible traumatic event he went through in his life, and yeah, so it was a thing that he felt was not that big of a deal, but the person he was talking to said, well, it was traumatic, so of course you downplayed it, and that's made its way through other aspects of your life. And one of the things they talked about was, people, I'm probably not doing it justice, forgive me, but I'm still going to talk. One of the ways that something that happens to people who go through trauma is their kind of fight or flight. It can turn on, like, it can go on a dime. So, like, one of the best ways to counter that is to try to be in the present. And one of the things they listed was breathing, because it's instantaneous and you can't not be in the present. when you do it. But they also gave this life hack, because when you're fight or flight, there's the part of your brain that's just like turns on, that's just like, it gets you heightened up and gets you into survival mode, because you're like, your brain doesn't distinguish between certain things, like if they're a big deal or not, but it can be easily triggered into that mode. And usually that happens when we think about something either in the past that happened or something in the future. So the best way to kind of veer away from that is to try to be in the present. Because most of the time, you're not in some life-threatening situation. I mean, and to prove that point, right now you're listening to a podcast. So if you're blessed enough to be born into a first world country, you know, you've got the time to listen to a podcast. You might be munching down on some food, so doesn't mean that bad stuff doesn't happen, but just hear me out. So anyway, the life hack for being into the present and turning off that sort of fight or flight is you use this method. It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you have to say it out loud, because the fight or flight part of your brain, it cognizes auditory stuff way more than it does just you thinking about it. So what you do is you say, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like 5 because of the 5 senses. You'll say like 5 things that I see. In my case, I'm recording this podcast in my restroom. So 5 things I see: my reflection, the lights, the mirror, the toothbrush, the floor. 4 things that I can hear: my voice, the air conditioner, and let's see, running water, and me knocking on the door. 3 things I can smell: my breath. I brush my teeth, so I'm good on that front. And my shirt, and just the air around me. 2 things I can taste: the 5-hour energy shot I took a while ago, and the breakfast sandwich I had for breakfast. And 1 thing I can feel, and when it comes to that, I'll usually say the ground upon which my feet are standing, or I'll put my hand on my chest and say, the heart of mine that is still beating, letting me know I'm alive. And then you say to the fight or flight part of your brain, you can stand down now, I've got this. And that's a way of letting yourself know you're not in any kind of immediate threat of danger. The things that happened in the past aren't happening now, and the things that are going to happen in the future, they might happen, they might not, but they're not happening at that instant. So, I don't know, just something to share. Well, I'm trying to get into real estate photography. I've shot 4 houses, 2 of which were houses that I just rented, and I went in and shot them. And the other 2 are actual gigs I got. I used most of the money though to have someone edit them so they look good. And I would like for that to be a thing, because I could probably work half as much as I do now and yet make twice as much. And if I wanted to, I could catch up on bills and stuff. What else? Oh yeah, I would also maybe try to get into wedding photography, because my sister tells me she can make like $500 a wedding, and I'm like, that's amazing. And I think to myself, if I worked with wedding photography the way that I do at Chick-fil-A, let's say, man, if I did like 5 weddings a week, that'd be like what, $2,500 in a week. That's a bit more than I make working in a month. I mean, if I really hustle, I could in theory like pay my house off in like 3 years, and that would be amazing. That'd probably be like the economic miracle of our age, being a millennial. I was born in 87. Being a millennial and having paid off your house, or making so much progress that, you know, you could ease up for a bit. But, you know, what with things going the way they are, you probably want to hustle as much as possible. Let's see. I definitely feel like I want things to be different, and I kind of have made it a goal that 2023 will be like my last year at Chick-fil-A. I feel like the absolute limit would be, and I don't want it to get this bad, is I think I would only allow myself to work up until December 31st. And then, you know, there would have to be a cutoff point. I'm hoping that my alternatives that I could do would be open. And the thing that really keeps me from just up and quitting now is I like the people that I work with. As long as I can have like a handful of people I like, I'm good. But really, it's just life happening that makes me think I gotta look for other venues, because my birthday's on July 28th. I'll be 36, and thank God that I do not look as old as I do for my age. I really hit the jackpot when it came to genetics and aging with both of my parents, who really didn't start to look older, and not even like egregiously older, but like their youthful facade began to, late into their 50s, began to show just a minuscule cracking, but still, they both look great for their age. Anyway, so yeah, 2023, my goal is this will be my last year at Chick-fil-A, and hopefully I'll be able to do other things that I can take care of my family with. Yep. Well, this has been the David Wells Experiment. It's been nice to talk to y'all. Maybe I overshared a bit, but you know, I don't make enough money to do therapy, so y'all will have to do, lol. And as I said before in the other podcast, have an absolutely super day, and we will see you next time. Bye.